Assalamu alaikum, my name is Mohammed bin Bilal and you're watching Brief. Pakistan has been facing a serious energy crisis for more than a decade now, and the results have been devastating. The energy crisis has caused considerable resistance in development of Pakistan. It has forced a number of businesses to shut down, increase unemployment, and reduced economic growth due to inefficient and expensive factors of production. We'll be talking more about this with Barrister Asghar, who's a corporate counsel and has pioneered the legal frameworks of the major power projects in Pakistan. So thank you so much for joining us. So CPEC has brought a massive amount of investment in Pakistan. It's worth $62 billion. Now, most of this investment is for power projects. Now, the question is whether CPEC projects will be able to solve our energy crisis or not.
First, I think we have to have a proper perspective and see when the CPEC investment was not there. So our project deficits or the amount of power deficit that we were facing was around 6,000 to 8,000 megawatts. And at peak, it used to climb to 10,000. So we had extensive load shedding. And we were denied any investment by the European countries for that matter. And there was no investment in the power projects at all due to our financial health. CPEC, it started in 2013 and then it culminated in a number of agreements in 2014 on G2G basis and brought in about $45 billion investment, which then increased to around $62 billion. So from the investment perspective, I think it was a very novel idea for a government to government. And they have set up a number of power projects which are already in production and some are in pipeline. And they are about to generate around 10,000 megawatt into the national grid. So that's the perspective that we are looking at in the CPEC.
All right. So now it's not a crisis of availability of generation of power. We can generate power. It's a crisis of affordability. Can CPEC solve this problem?
Yes, I think that's a very pertinent question, and that those issues were raised at that point of time. See, at that point of time, as I said, the investment was not forthcoming, so we had to incentivize the investment and by getting them a good return of money. So that was one aspect. You have to have attractive investments for Pakistan to seek investment. So that was one aspect. Secondly, we have to address our house in order, and that is because these projects, luckily, they are not on the balance sheet of the government of Pakistan. They are based on the revenues that these projects are going to generate. But unfortunately, the way our distribution companies are structured and they are mired in corruption, for every 100 units, we are only getting 7 units billed and collected. So around 30 units are being lost. So there the problem is we are not able to handle our financial position, the technical issues with the distribution companies, and those revenues are not going to be sufficient to pay the CPEC projects back. So that's the major worry. And due to that, we are having a circular debt of around 1 trillion, which is a major concern even for the CPEC and the government of China.
What can we do to actually mitigate this problem?
Well, the transparency. The governance issue, the board of directors should be professionally managed. And secondly, ultimately, these distribution companies have to be privatized because the government is not into the running of these distribution companies. Wherever the government steps in, there are obviously issues with it. There is a bureaucratic red tape, there is more corruption, the procurements are not transparent, and these technical issues and the theft, they are going to eat our revenue in. And resultantly, the government of Pakistan will be stepping in with the taxpayer money, and they will not be viable in that sense.
But isn't privatization an evil on its own if it's out of control?
Well, yes, out of control, but the regulator has to be strengthened. Unfortunately, our regulator, be it the OGRA in oil and gas sector and the NEPRA in the electricity power sector, they are manned by retired bureaucrats. So those are the dumping grounds for the bureaucrats. So if they are not manned professionally, then obviously the private sector will get away with. So we have to have a very effective and a more intervening regulator to act in the public interest as well.
And will CPEC be helping us make this power generation cheaper?
Not for the time being, because the first 10 years of all these projects, they are being financed by the lenders. So obviously you will have to repay their loan. So after the first 10 to 12 years, then your tariff drastically reduces. Your debt are being repaid. So from year, say, 11 to 25 or 26, your tariff will be reduced, and overall the basket price will reduce. But I think there has been no analysis to the fact that most of these projects are based on imported coal. and they are linked to the international prices, in which the government of Pakistan or the government of China does not have any control. It is driven by the market. So I think the prices will go up, but after the repayment of the major loans, the tariff will come down.
Now, speaking of imported coal, these power projects have been basically initiated in the upper parts of Punjab, and they're actually running on imported fuel. Why couldn't these power projects be initiated at the coastal areas, the key areas?
Exactly, very pertinent question. I think one, you can see the Port Qasim, that is based in Port Qasim, Karachi, so that is at the seaport. The Saiwal power project, which is in the heart of Punjab, basically the government of Punjab carried out a feasibility, and they said whether it would be cheaper to transport coal or to wire it. Wire in the sense, if we set up a power project near the coastal area and then transmit the electricity through the transmission line. So they came up to the conclusion that the transportation of the coal is much more cheaper option, to which I do not agree. I think you are very right. It should have been around the coastal areas, and then it should have been wired into the mainland, which has not been done. And that the tariff for the transportation of the coal is being passed on to the consumers, so that it makes it more costly.
So, sir, according to the Water and Power Ministry, as well as NEPRA, the potential of the existing resources, the hydel, the solar, the wind, and the thermal projects, it's much more than its usage. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think if you can recently see the media, there is a much more hype on the reservoir-based projects and to store the water.
Kalabagh
Dam and the
Bhasha Dam.
Bhasha Dam.
Yes.
So I think we now need to concentrate on those. We have a lot of now electricity in the grid. The surplus electricity is there, be it from the solar, the wind, hydropower. Even the CPEC is investing in a large manner in hydropower projects in AJK and KP. So apart from that, in the thermal and RLNG projects, so we are going to have a sufficient electricity. The only problem that now we face is the transmission and distribution bottlenecks. So we need massive investments over there. According to one study and report, it is around 80 billion that we need to invest in the transmission and the distribution network, so that the actual generation of electricity is passed on to the consumers. And that's why you can realize that in this summer, although we are in a surplus situation, but the load shedding is still going on.
Exactly.
Because our transmission and distribution network is not up to the mark. And when the generation maybe is 21 to 22,000 megawatt, and the demand is similarly that, but they cannot carry the electricity to the consumers, and there are frequent breakdowns.
So how can you improve that? How can you solve this problem?
Well, transmission policy, the government of Pakistan has announced since 2015, and in that you would hear a big transmission line is coming from Matiari in Sindh to Lahore.
But we've heard that before, that we're going to have transmission lines all across Pakistan, but we still don't get the electricity.
Yes, we are not getting, because the government had not, unfortunately, marketed that component of the power market. Resultantly, there is no investment. We are having only a monopoly of a National Transmission and Dispatch Company, which is manned by old professionals. They are not into getting investment for our transmission. And similarly, our distribution business, again, it needs a massive investment. There is a kunda culture, there is a theft, there is a collusion by the meter readers.
How can we counter this monopoly?
Well, to inject more private sector, both in the transmission side and the distribution. To spin off, and the distribution company, like for example, Fesco, Lesco, Mapco, they are operating in Lahore, Faisalabad and the Multan area. You allow more trading into those areas. You allow individuals to come in to distribute electricity. You allow generators in the private sector to compete with them, and at the same time make them more efficient and make them more accountable by making their board of governors in the first place more private sector persons coming on the board, and subsequently selling off some of those shares.
How can we make the public sector professional and efficient, that they can start countering the private sector, so that we don't need the private sector as much as we do now?
Yeah. I think first the boards are, presently the boards are political appointees of the government. So those should be taken away. The professionals should come in. They should look at the transition period. They should look how to improve the efficiency. Then the operation and maintenance, that can be outsourced to the private sector, so that the theft, the technical losses, those can be reduced. I think NEPRA is expecting 100% recovery, but they, as I said earlier, every 100 units, we are only getting 70 being paid back. So that is the key area.
All right, so now what are some of the projects that have been actually constructed under CPEC, and are they generating revenue according to their potential?
Yes, they are generating, but unfortunately
And what kind of projects are there which have been actually built?
So for example, Sahiwal Power Project, it's an imported coal, 1320 megawatt. Port Qasim, another 1320 megawatt. Then we have on a local coal in Thar coal, we have around 660 megawatt. We have another China hub power company setting up 1320 megawatt in the coastal area. That is under construction, and 2 have been commissioned, the Port Qasim and the Sahiwal. They are operating in accordance with their technical specifications, according to their agreements. But the problem is, due to the circular debt, they are not being paid. So already they are falling behind on the arrears, and that forces the government of China to rethink its investment strategy in Pakistan, because they are not getting their revenue as expected. And all this revenue is pledged with the lenders. So if the lenders are not comfortable, then their all future investment is going to be in jeopardy.
Are we waiting for some sort of a catastrophe to actually resulting from our complacency for this given opportunity?
Exactly. I think I've talked to a number of Chinese investors, and had this first phase been successful, they would have come in a larger manner. And larger, I think the investment in Gwadar, that is a key area. They had proposed Gwadar Airport, Gwadar City uplift, plus they were setting up the export processing zone and an industrial free zone. That is not maturing, and the Gwadar port as well.
So we are waiting for a catastrophe.
We are waiting for a catastrophe. We, I think, dragged our feet. We gave them exemptions about 2 to 3 years late, and we are not pulling off the matching response that the Chinese want. And I think that is a big failure on our part.
All right. So there's a general perception that started at the top, and now it's trickled down to the common man, that Pakistan has missed this grand opportunity that was given to us in the shape of CPEC. How do you feel about that?
Yes, I think we did not have that adequate infrastructure to support our initiative. Talking to a number of investors, the land acquisition, they are facing problems, the Chinese. The government is not giving them the adequate protection that they need over here. And we have not offered them the one window that we initially promised under G2G arrangement.
Which was?
That you come in and rest of all the homework will be done by us, and you just come in and turn in the key and start the construction of the project. That has not happened. So we have been facing a lot of resistance from the bureaucracy, from the landowners, and they have not been able to start the projects on time. And all this delay has resulted in the cost of the projects going up. Look at the Neelam Jhelum. We have started with 80 billion and ending up around 509 billion. So it's more than 6 times.
It's massive.
And a delay of nearly a decade, and which resulted in losing our fight with India on Kishan Ganga, because the international court held that the Kishan Ganga was completed prior to our Neelam Jhelum. So I think all of these things are going to hurt us in a long term in the economy. Now the need of us is to engage the Chinese and to build mega projects like Basha Diamir or Kalabagh, so that the reservoir based, on one hand we get the cheap electricity, and secondly our water storage problem is solved. Unless we come up with the modern solutions, we are not able to, because I've heard that Chinese did offer to set up the Basha Diamir Dam, but we opposed it because we did not want to securitize the assets of Ghazi Baroda or Tarbela, to which my mind is not good approach, because already the assets of China, of the WABDA, has been mortgaged to the foreign lenders. So why not to the Chinese?
So what is the point of not allowing the Chinese to do it?
And the Chinese would be investing in the Amir Basha, and we will have a storage dam plus the electricity based on a very low rates of tariff.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
With so much to be heard about CPEC, these projects seem to finally end our energy crisis. But keeping in mind the track record of Pakistan's government, the implementation of these projects would be very difficult, and nothing should be considered until it's done. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all again next week.